Well, I'm thrilled to see such a good attendance today, although I suspect that a number of you, like me, are just really excited to have a day out of the office, particularly the day that the May revise comes out. So that was good timing on our part. So this morning we're going to go through our business meeting and at the same time have a great talk to make all of us glad that we didn't go into the office today and more eager to go back on Monday. And then talk a little bit about what we've accomplished this first organizational year and what we expect of ourselves this coming year. So with that, we'll begin by adopting the agenda for today. I need a motion to do so. Don't all rush, okay? Monique, I don't know who's taking notes. And if you need to come up so you can see who's doing that for staff, please feel free. And a second, there was somebody next to her, great. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. So for old business, we have the minutes from our meeting exactly a year ago in this very place. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? A second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Well, we're a third of the way through our agenda. So our new business for this year is to elect our officers, and then we'll talk about the executive committee. The executive committees are appointed essentially by the old public library systems, but the officers are up for election, and Valerie Summer will make a report of the nominating committee.
Thank you, Jane. I'm pleased to say that the nominating committee, comprised of myself and Karen Burnett, have nominated Jane Light for president and Susan Gallinger for vice president. So I hereby move that Jane Light, make a motion that Jane Light I can't even think of the word, too much coffee. Anyway, I move Jane Light for president, and because the nominating committee has moved her, we do not have to have a second, but I want to know if there are any nominations from the floor. Okay. So the voters have to be the people who are representing one per jurisdiction. I don't believe SAB members are voting members. So on the question, all in favor for Jane Light as president? Raise your hand, say aye. All opposed? Anyone opposed? We have our president. Same thing with our vice president. I move that Susan Gallinger spent a year as vice president. Are there any nominations from the floor? Okay. On the question, all in favor of Susan? Raise your hand. Aye. Anyone opposed? Great, we have a slate of officers then. Thank you.
Thank you. So, as I said, each system selects their own representatives, so 2 representatives per system to the executive committee. I want to thank Kim Burton and Karen Burnett, who've been on the executive committee this year and are leaving it, and it's really been wonderful to have the vision during this first year that they brought to us. I want to welcome Teresa Landers from Santa Cruz and Lisa Rosenblum from Sunnyvale as new members of the executive committee. And then continuing members are Julie Farnsworth and Susan Gallinger, Valerie Summer and Susan Holmer, Eleanor Eulinger, and I will continue for another year too. So we're going to move on to the President's report. The chief work product for the year is a strategic plan, which we're going to discuss at length later in the agenda. But I wanted to update you on some other activities. Chief of which we're working on up to 4 LSTA grants next year for PLP. The first 2 are grants where we're really partnering with the state library, and we will function as a fiscal manager for a statewide program. And that is to our benefit in a lot of ways, including financially. One of those is a literacy initiatives. The state library recognizes that given the funding difficulties, both at the state level and locally, that some of our literacy programs that we've had for over 20 years now are really at some risk, and it's time after 20 years to take another look anyway. So they're going to be supporting some literacy staff training and succession planning, looking at some innovative projects that will be able to really attract and keep in our programs those targeted populations who are so vulnerable that it makes it difficult in these kind of times for people to even participate in our programs. So that program we anticipate will be funded, and it will be a statewide program. I think some of us will be very, very interested in participating. There's also going to be a California preservation program where there's continuing and ongoing demand for disaster training, preservation risk assignment assessments, and management information for some of our collections. The state library has been getting a lot of requests for help in this area. They want workshops, training, and so forth. And so we're anticipating a grant in that area. The third grant will be the second year of a competitive grant for about open source libraries. We're a founding member of an MOU with both NorthNet and the Southern California group to create awareness and training on open source alternatives for our ILSs, and to assist libraries that have already made a commitment to migrate to an open source option. The second year will focus on at least 3 pilot projects, one in each of these 3 systems. That project is actually managed though by Khalifa, but we will be the fiscal agent. Linda, did you want to say something?
Sure.
This is awkward.
This is, those of you who know me well know that things happen. They happen really quickly. On Wednesday, I had a conversation with Laurier, who is our consultant for the Open Source Open Libraries, and she's been working with Los Gatos Library, and they are in the process of migrating to Koha, and she said, why can't they be a pilot project? And we have some money from this year's grant, so we are going to give them $9,500, and so PLP will have the first project up and running before really anybody else and before the second year starts, because they're about halfway there. So congratulations, Los Gatos. They're not here yet, but they know about it.
And if you're interested in learning more, Linda Dido, the Assistant Director at Los Gatos, will be here shortly, but they are opening bids for their new library this morning, and so she's not coming in till that's done. So the fourth grant we're looking at is really kind of a windfall project, and it's happening soon. The State Library informed each of the CLSA systems in April that they would award grants to systems to use for helping libraries in hard times. But the funds, of course, are limited, and the proposals were due just 3 weeks later. Many of you received emails polling us about several options of how those funds might be used. So the choices were clear. We wanted the system to pay for Gale's career transition database and for Altarama, which is a reference management tool. And then the third one, which we were going to purchase in any case, and I think we might talk a little more about it, is a program or a software called Mega Meeting, which will allow staff to participate in virtual meetings, programs, and trainings. And that's something the Executive Committee has talked about as essential to the future function of PLP, but we think it also potentially brings, particularly for multi-system, multi-branch libraries, real potential to look at ways to use our staff differently, not spend travel time for meetings, and to use some technology. So I'm very pleased about that, and I think we'll be getting more information pretty soon about it. The second one is Altarama, and it's one of several, but it's a reference management tool, so you can manage reference questions. You can potentially use it for online reference. It has several different components to it, so you can do SMS reference, and so several of us have been looking at that anyway. For those of us who've been using the, participating in the 24-hour reference services that is now being unfunded by the state library, have been looking at alternatives, and that was one that many of us have been looking at. I don't know if anybody from PLP wants to say any more about that tool.